Welcome in, everyone. It is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast sponsored by Prosper Trading, where you can stop gambling on games you can't control and start trading the markets you can. I'm Jim Coventry, and today I'm giving you my reactions to the Week 16 action. What a week. What a set of games. But you know what? I know the Sunday games are great, but we have to talk about two games that happened earlier in the week because we haven't talked about them. And so, yes, I am starting the show with a Thursday night game that is now like 3 days old. So we are going to talk the Seahawks edge the Rams. I don't know how you don't call that the game of the year. Obviously, all the stakes for that game, both teams were playing for the number one seed. Now that could change, but they're playing for the number one seed. The Rams had won the first meeting. So the Seahawks 38, the Rams 37 in overtime. The Seahawks moved to 12-3, the Rams to 11-4. And what a brilliant game it was. No Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua. And I know they lost, but also on that side. 12 for 225 and 2 touchdowns on 16 targets. No. So with Stafford throwing for 457 and 3, obviously with 225 going to Puka, no other receiver had more than 57 yards. And the running game, 39 carries for $124. They did well enough. The Rams really were able to take it to a Seattle defense. And in the craziness of the game, and I know we get down to that wild 2-point conversion that Seattle scores. More on that lately. Rams ready to kick off. Rams probably had that game, but they didn't have that game. And we'll talk about the Seattle end in a minute. But I do give a ton of credit to Matthew Stafford. I had a decision in my own league between Dak Prescott and Matthew Stafford. And Stafford didn't do great in the first matchup against Seattle, and this one was in Seattle. And I didn't even factor. I mean, the weather was no issue. It rained a little bit. It wasn't an issue. I didn't even factor it in. I go, this is a terrible matchup. There's no Devontae Adams. And, I was thinking Stafford might throw for 280, might throw a couple touchdowns if it all works out. Did not see 457 and 3. Did not see that. The level that Matthew Stafford is playing at, don't care if they lost this game. If he isn't the MVP after this game, I don't know what to tell you, because the level he is playing at is so unconscious. It's not like the 11-4 record is embarrassing for the Rams, not like it's like a non-playoff team. And but all that said, it's just he amazes me week after week after week. And then Puka Nacua. And look, I could say all day, Sean McVay made Cooper Kupp. Sean McVay made Puka Nacua. Who cares? Who cares? Because both of them have done amazing things. They're the ones catching the ball. They're the ones getting open. And Puka Nacua, it does not matter. You could put whatever coverage you want. You can put whatever cornerback on him. He is always schemed open. Matthew Stafford is always able to connect with them. Does not matter. And, Puka's on the ground a lot. I complain about that. But dude's tough as nails. Keeps getting up, answering the bell, putting up big games, carrying the team on his back. They didn't win, but it was very solid. The one thing look, a lot of people ask a question about Colby Parkinson, and it was tough because I'm like, all right, I know he's had some production. He had a couple touchdowns, and he's getting 4 to 6 targets a game. His yardage is good. And I'm worried because I know this happens a lot to him. Colby Parkinson is just a guy. I mean, he is like the poster child of just a guy, but he was in the right place at the right time. And I told people that day when I was on XM that day, and I told people, I said, you know what? Don't be surprised if Sean McVay says, you know what? Seattle has seen we've been using Parkinson. I'm just going to use Davis Allen and Terrace Ferguson here. And what ended up happening was Davis Allen had 5 targets, Ferguson and Parkinson had 4. The lowest producer was Parkinson. Now he had 2 drops, 2 for 21. Ferguson 33 and a touchdown. Davis Allen 2 for 34. That's the whole point. Sean McVay just decides who's going to eat, and for a few weeks it was Parkinson, and that's the problem. If Parkinson was just a guy and he was the only tight end, right now I feel better about it. But to know that it's whatever whim McVay's at, he does not need Parkinson. Any of those other guys could do the same thing he does. So just found it interesting because they play all those 3 tight end sets that are all on the field anyway. So all that said, great offensive performance. They lose, but Seattle, give them all the credit here. Sam Darnold, couple back-breaking, turnovers. And the book is so clear. We've seen it for about 6 weeks now, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Defenses know you just drop players into the natural spots in the throwing lanes, and he doesn't see them. They dropped the defensive lineman. I think Kobe Turner, maybe they dropped him like directly back. A defensive lineman. Darnold threw the ball right to him. There was a play earlier in the game. They dropped the player in coverage, didn't see him. And but Rashid Shaheed, a big kick return. Kenneth Walker, a couple big plays. Seattle came up big in the second half, and they just persevered. And that's why you give them credit. They persevered. And that 2-point conversion. And this is the funny part of it, right? Sam Darnold does what Sam Darnold does. He didn't want to throw a backwards pass. He was throwing a forward pass. But Sam Darnold did a Sam Darnold. He threw it backwards, and everybody in the field thought the play was done. And Charbonnet, happenstance. He was not trying to pick up the ball, score a touchdown. He just saw there, I'll grab the ball. And it wasn't like, yes, I got a 2-point conversion. No, he didn't think that for a second. And I still wonder, if that was a fumble, you can't advance a fumble. Now, I don't know if that's a last 2-minute thing. I don't know if that plays on a 2-point conversion. I don't know how that works. That was weird. It was really weird. But again, it was a Sam Darnold mistake that got refereed or technicality into a 2-point conversion. And I still say this, though. Darnold gets credit. Smith and Jigbo is great in the second half. Goose egged in the first half, not his fault, his quarterback's fault. But in the second half, they got him like 10 targets, caught 96 yards and a touchdown worth. Wow, inevitable, phenomenal player. And Kenneth Walker, I know Kenneth Walker had like no fan. He was like less than 4 fantasy points in the previous 2 games. And of course, he goes 11 for 100 on the ground. He goes 3 for 64 through the air. Of course, he has a huge game because that's what Kenneth Walker does. Kenneth Walker disappoints you. And then when you sit him, then he has this huge game. And then next year, everybody's back in on Kenneth Walker. We're drafting him as running back 16 because this is the year. And I said, we always got to construct a narrative for this guy. He's talented. No question he's talented. But you watch the game. I tell you every week. Kenneth Walker, he had one good inside run. Credit for that. But all he does is he pokes outside to look for a hole to run in. And if he does, he's fast. And if he can get that hole in the run, big plays waiting there. It doesn't happen much. And that's the problem. He just wants to run outside. College. He wants to play college football. And it's great, but it's not a winning strategy for NFL football. Charbonnet scores a touchdown, of course, but Walker still outscores Minnesota, so there's that. Other than that, it was a Smith and Jigba show. A.J. Barner, though, if you play A.J. Barner, he came up 4 for 49 in a touchdown. But all that said, 75 points scored on a Thursday night. A lot of people's fantasy games were already set in motion. The fact if you had Nakua, if you had Stafford, Smith and Jigba was a common game for him. If you had Walker and you played him, it was like unexpected points. So it was one of these games, especially the cool one, like the week prior, it was Kyle Pitts. It kind of sets the week. And so what a great game, though. Hats off to both teams. I hope they meet again. I would love to see a third meeting between these teams. I would love to see it with Devontae Adams on the field as well. We'll see if that comes to pass. All right, everybody, every weekend, millions bet on sports, hoping to beat the odds. But here's the truth. The house always wins. With trading, you're not betting. You're building. At Prosper Trading Academy, we give you the tools, the education, and the live guidance to actually create an edge. You control the risk and compound your wins, trade alongside real pros every single day. Stop gambling on games you can't control. Start trading the market you can. Visit prospertrading.com/roto, R-O-T-O today and take your shot at real financial growth. All right. Instant reaction number 2. I did tell you, I normally just stick to Sunday games. But how do I not talk about Bears, Packers? What an amazing finish to that game. A more crazy football. And that's the beauty of the NFL, right? And when you bet on these games, you got to look back and say, I'm betting on this game, and these are the crazy plays that are turning it. A weird 2-point conversion in Seattle, and we'll get to the Chicago play in a minute. We're betting, and these are the things that are turning wins and losses on bets. It's not analysis, and look, I love to bet, and I love the handicap games, but man, this is often what it comes down to. Bears 22, Packers 16. Bears go to 11-4. They're the 2-seed game behind Seattle. And the Packers fall to 9-5-1. Now, we'll talk later. The Lions lost today. So the Packers, I think it's 1 win or 1 Detroit loss, and they're in the playoffs. 2 weeks left. Shouldn't be a problem. So the Bears, now, how do they win this game, right? The Bears are losing this game. It seems like a lost cause. Jordan Love gets concussed early. Malik Willis does a very nice job. We go into the fourth quarter, and we have the Packers up 13-3. The Bears do cut it to 7. Packers, again, they go in and kick a field goal. So this is 16-6. This thing looks all but over. Well, the Bears, this is where it gets crazy, right? The Bears are trying to come back from a 10-point deficit. And then they botched the clock. Typical Chicago. Not Ben Johnson, but typical Chicago. I live in Chicago. I've seen this my whole life. They run the clock inside the 2-minute warning before Santos kicks the field goal. And so now they're stuck because they had to burn an extra timeout. They were in trouble. If they kick the field goal, they're down 7. And of course, now they got to go for the onside kick. Well, 8% odds. And the Bears get the kick. Flashbacks to Brandon Bostic, that playoff game against Seattle years and years. I know if I gave you some PTSD, I know Iggy from the fantasy community, I know he texted me or messaged me on X. He's like, oh man, PTSD. But I remember that game, and I liked Seattle in that playoff game and that Brandon Bostic fumble. So Green Bay fans know very well about being on the wrong end of an onside kick. And then the Bears do get the ball, and wow, sure enough, 8 plays, 53 yards, and then Jade Walker scores the touchdown. Green Bay sends a blitz. The defensive back Nixon is supposed to go with Walker, leaves him wide open. I don't even know if Caleb knew Walker was open. Maybe he did. He has great vision, but I don't even know if he knew he was open. If he just threw it up there because that's where something was, but nobody near him. Bad play by the Packers, and then that goes on. And then the Packers do go on downs, and we'll talk about Josh Jacobs later, and he wasn't injured. So this is weird, but we'll get to it. So anyway, Green Bay turn it over, Bears get the ball, and what a pass by Caleb Williams to DJ Moore. And everybody out there who listens to me every week, you know how much I think the world of DJ Moore. I think he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. I think he's had a raw deal in terms of quarterbacks in his career. And then they had that year with Justin Fields where he finally put the numbers up. And then he gets Ben Johnson. And then all of a sudden, Ben Johnson doesn't like DJ Moore's body language. So DJ Moore is like not part of the offense. But yet he has 4 22-point games in the last 7 with a few close to goose eggs. But DJ Moore, perfect pass by Caleb Williams. DJ Moore does a wonderful job holding onto the ball. DJ Moore was beat up in that game, took a cheap shot in the back early in that game. You could tell he was holding his back for a while, but that man is nails. And one of the reasons I draft him in fantasy is that for that reason, he doesn't miss time. He was in the hospital earlier this year and he played the next Sunday. So nails, but DJ Moore, so it took overtime, but DJ Moore gets you done there. And if you counted on DJ Moore, 5 for 97 in a touchdown, he chipped in a 12-yard run. So again, big game, second straight 22-point game for DJ Moore. The running game, DeAndre Swift, 13 for 58. Monangai right there, 9 for 50. They split the work. They both had similar workloads. Monangai surprised us. Usually Swift's the receiver, 2 for 12. Monangai goes 3 for 43. Monangai has the better fantasy game. Very interesting there. But again, Swift is the lead back, but Monangai's the power runner. And if they play a defense where the power run game is working, Monangai does rate the advantage. Caleb Williams, look, for 4 quarters, it wasn't a great game, but he did what it took to win. Did what it took to win. There, that sounds much better. 250 and 2 touchdowns, 19 to 34. And but again, he was down receivers. No Luther Burden, no Romo Dunze. Zacchaeus steps up because Jade Walker had the touchdown. But the Bears didn't have a big day through the air, but they ran well. And like I said, when it counted, they got the late points. And they took advantage of the onside kick, and they scored in overtime. So, again, big credit to the Bears. Huge home win for them, the Packers side. So, I just heard a report today that Josh Jacobs was, benched. It was like he fumbled. I get it. But really? You're going to bench Josh Jacobs? Really? The guy's the engine of your offense. He's, in some ways, you might consider him like the heart and soul of the offense. You might. Some people say Jordan Love. I might say Josh Jacobs because of his toughness, like DJ Moore, incredibly tough. And I know the whole league is tough, but these dudes that go above and beyond, obviously, they play in extreme levels of pain, Jacobs and DJ Moore. But Jacobs gets 12 carries. He gets 2 targets. So if you started him, look, he's had workloads like that this season. That wasn't been uncommon. And before the injury, he's had workloads, and he's cashed. He fumbled. It could have been a touchdown. That would have changed his fantasy day. I don't feel bad recommending him to start. If I was going to tell you 12 touches and 2 targets, I would have said, yes, you're starting Josh Jacobs because that is a reasonable workload. But apparently Coach LaFleur said Emmanuel Wilson was playing better. All right, nice. Whatever. You lost the game, dude. Good job, Matt LaFleur. You deserve to lose because if you don't have Jordan Love on the field, Bears aren't looking to worry about Emmanuel Wilson. they're worried about Josh Jacobs because Josh Jacobs can set up things off of Jacobs. They're not setting anything above Emmanuel Wilson. So anyway, Matt LaFleur, you probably coached your way into a loss and you probably deserve it. But Josh Jacobs apparently had no setback. So you're probably hoping now if you made it to week 17, you may not know yet as of this recording, but you probably have Josh Jacobs. And my guess is after this loss, Packers can't afford to bench him again. Beautiful move. The receivers, of course, Romeo Doubs has the game. He had done very little for weeks. Goes 584 and a touchdown. Christian Watson was really the big loser when Jordan Love went out, and because he ended up with 2 for 17 because the deep passing game, not that it's all he does, but that's where he gets a lot of traction. And with Malik Willis, and that game changed. We were doing a lot of RPO stuff. So it all, worked out for the Packers to keep it close, but they lost. And Jaden Reed, 3 for 35, chipped in a 6-yard run. But again, losing Jordan Love hurt them. It definitely did. And I threw some shade on Matt LaFleur, and it was probably mean-spirited. Probably shouldn't have said it. But really, going without your starting quarterback for 3 quarters of the game, yeah, it's an issue. Jordan Love threw 13 pass attempts in about a quarter of play. Malik Willis threw the ball 11 times in with overtime, almost like 4 quarters of play. So that tells you how much they wanted to pass ball. They ran 44 times and they passed 24 times. So there was that. But Packers are still, Jordan Love, I hope he's okay. It was a very nasty hit he took. I hope he recovers well. Don't know if he'll be back. They play Saturday next week. He doesn't get an extra day. When they were playing Saturday, you might have thought they're playing Saturday against the Ravens. But with them needing 1 win or 1 Lions loss, we'll see how that shakes out with the Packers. Obviously, you got to pass concussion protocol. It's not a decision to play him. It's whatever the medical science says. So we hope the best for Jordan Love. That was a nasty hit he took to the head. On a side note, obviously we love football, and remember on ESPN there used to be the jacked up section where they would show the hard hits, and then all hits are all penalties and get you suspended. There was a lot of incredible hitting this weekend. I saw it in a number of games. It was like above and beyond what we're used to seeing, and it was some like massive hits. So I just thought that was very interesting. It was more than usual, and some players were taking some really big headshots. So I don't know what was in the water this week, but it was crazy. When I go back and watch them all 22s, I'm looking forward to seeing how many of them were, because maybe I overreacted, but it seemed like a whole lot. All right, Dabble isn't just another DFS app. It's the ultimate social platform where you can connect with other fantasy sports lover. Dabble lets you win big. You can win up to 5,000 times your money this football season. Starting with Dabble's easy. New users get $25 free when signing up. No deposit necessary. Check out the link in the episode description below to download Dabble now. All right, instant reaction number 3. Trevor Lawrence crushes the Denver defense. Who saw that coming? I did not. People are asking me start-sit questions about Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence had the game of all games, like 57 fantasy points last week. Great game. Trevor Lawrence did wonderfully. But I look back at his season, and I know he's gotten a little better as the season gone. I understand. And Jacoby Myers made a difference. Trevor Lawrence has like 5 games at 18 or fewer fantasy points, and he's playing at Denver. And Denver has corners, and Denver has a pass rush. Well, Trevor Lawrence got it done. 34 for the Jaguars, 20 for the Broncos. Jaguars moved to 11-4, 1 game off the Broncos, 12-3. With that win, if the Jaguars, now the Patriots are certainly involved in this as well, but if the Jaguars now tie with the Broncos, guess who gets the head-to-head tiebreaker? Because they won 34-20, the Jaguars. What a crazy turnaround for the season for them. Trevor Lawrence, 23 of 36, 279, 3 touchdowns. Okay, good. But he ran for 20 more yards and another touchdown. So 4 touchdowns after 6 last week. If you've been starting Trevor Lawrence, you have been really, really cashing in. Now, receiver-wise, all right, 279, good. Who did the damage? Parker Washington. Probably on most people's benches. Somebody in deep league started him for sure. He hadn't been doing much the last couple of weeks. It really became about Myers and Brian Thomas. But I think what happened was, I have to assume, Liam Cohen realizes, all right, you got Riley Moss, who can be beat, and then you got Patrick Surtain. Well, I bet the Denver Broncos aren't paying too much attention to Parker Washington. So I think Liam Cohen had a game plan, and we saw Washington. He had a 63-yard catch. He wasn't really guarded too much. He had a lot big field in front of him. 6 for 145 and a touchdown, 10 targets, more targets than Jacoby Myers. Brilliant move by Liam Cohen. If they're not going to pay attention to Parker Washington, who is talented, You use them. Jacoby Myers, 8 targets, 4 for 45. Catches those middle of the field passes. Tough matchup. Floor game, not bad. Brian Thomas, you know how it's been. Targeted only 3 times, 2 of 18. He had a couple decent games, but there haven't been many. So you know the drill. I don't need to bag on Brian Thomas. There's really not doing anybody any good here. If you start him, you knew this was in play. You didn't. And when I watch the all 22 again, well, I'm watching all these games, and then I'm writing up the early games. I had a report on all the games I put out by halftime of the Sunday nighter. So just so you get it, Brian Thomas. I don't know how much Patrick Surtain was on him, but clearly it wasn't going on for him again. But it's just been the season for Brian Thomas, right? Travis Etienne. We knew this was a bad matchup. And last week, I pointed out when Josh Jacobs played against Denver, no, Jacobs is a power runner. He'll be fine. Etienne, I was worried about because Etienne is more, he can run inside, but he's better when he gets to the outside, and Denver's fast. And that wasn't a great matchup. But Etienne made a couple of really, really nice plays. He actually got tripped up on what would have been a rushing touchdown, 16 for 50 on the ground, about 3 yards. Probably had a 24-yard run. Again, he got tackled, dropped short of the goal line. But as a receiver, only 16 yards, but 4 catches, and one of those 4th receiving touchdown in 2 weeks for Travis Etienne. So nobody's arguing with 66 scrimmage yards, 4 catches, and a touchdown. It's about 16.6 PPR points, and you can't argue with that against Denver. Etienne has been a volume king, and it has been amazing. But again, great job, Jacksonville. If you've got Etienne or Myers or Lawrence, you're really excited about the fantasy championship with them. And they play the Colts next week. Moving on to Denver. So this is one of those games they trailed. They trailed most of the game, and that played to their advantage. RJ Harvey only got 7 carries, but he had a 38-yard run in there. So he gets a 50 yards and a touchdown on the ground. And then 5 targets, but 71 yards. So Harvey only touches the ball 11 times, but he goes for 121 and a touchdown. I think it was the 4th straight week Harvey's gotten it done for you for fantasy. It's been wonderful. He's gotten it done in different ways. Not always efficient, but he's been effective. And he's finding the touchdown regularly. So that's been great. The only receiver to have a biggish game was Cortland Sutton. 12 targets, dominated. Nobody else had more than 8. 6 for 86 and a touchdown. So Bo Nix's only touchdown went there. Nix throws for 352 and a touchdown and an interception, ran for 11 yards, 28 of 47. Just the usual inconsistency. For fantasy, was fine. If you start him this week, you got a good game out of him. Cannot argue with his performance. But again, for NFL, I'm very concerned in the playoffs because Nix will, at some point, if they make a deep run, he will be exposed in a playoff game, and it will cost the Broncos. And it's unfortunate. Young quarterback. Well, not young in real years. He's young in NFL years. So there's that. Pat Bryant, very unfortunate injury. Pat Bryant was carted off. I don't know what the exact injury was. He led the team with 8 targets, 5 catches, 42 yards. Troy Franklin, 5 targets. He caught a 48-yard pass late when they were trailing. So that saved his fantasy day because otherwise Franklin had like 3 catches for 18 yards, but that 48-yard bomb late, it really helped him. Got him to 10.6 PPR points. Otherwise, Evan Ingram had a 33-yard catch, so 2 for 36 there. But outside of that, Denver, Sutton, I'm very glad that Sutton's turned it around. That's worked out really well for him because it hadn't been going great. But there was that while where Troy Franklin was getting 8 to 10 targets a game, and it was more than Sutton. But Sutton has now reemerged where he should have been all along. Maybe Sean Payton figured he shouldn't out-genius himself as much as he had been. But a great performance by the Jaguars. Again, hats off to them. They're doing wonderfully. All right, we are going to go over more of this week's reactions after we take a short break. All right, instant reaction number 4. The Steelers win a wild one over the Detroit Lions, and that game went Steelers 29, Lions 24. I went on the show a couple minutes late because that game was winding down. Detroit was making a fast and a furious comeback late in that one, and with 12 and final score again with 29-24 Steelers go to 9-6. The Lions go to 8-7. By my calculations, 1 loss or 1 Green Bay win, and they're done. Now, I think the 49ers, if the 49ers would lose all 3, I think that would kind of put them in the range too. So, but we'll see what happens with that. But it's not good for the Lions right now. Now, with 12 minutes left in this game, I'll start with the Lions. The Lions were going to have a horrible fantasy day. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think he had like 4 or 5 PPR points. Well, because of the last 12 minutes just going crazy, Gibbs gets 13 targets, goes 10 for 66 and a touchdown. He only rushed for 2 yards. So Jahmyr Gibbs ends up with almost 23 PPR points in a game where he was like ready to have like the hugest bust of the fantasy semis. But as always, Gibbs finds a way. And really, Amon-Ra St. Brown wasn't far behind, and he didn't completely bail it out. I believe he had a touchdown call back to my recollection. 10 targets, 4 for 54. You'll take the 9.4, but the way St. Brown was playing with this matchup, you were certainly hoping for something closer to 20. Jameson Williams, similar to St. Brown, 9 targets, caught 5 for 70. Again, decent floor game, but this was a game you thought he was going to go off. Khalif Raymond, of course, scores a touchdown. Isaac Tesla, of course, scores a second touchdown. Actually, both Raymond and Tesla outscored Williams and St. Brown. So real frustrating. And of course, if they're not using the tight end since losing Laporte injury, Anthony Ferkser steps in 4 for 40. David Montgomery was completely game scripted out of this one with the Lions trailing almost the entire way. So Monty goes 4 for 14. If you use him, it was the worst possible scenario. The other side, the Steelers, the Kenny Gainwell show. I move ahead of myself. It's the running back show is what I should say, because both running backs go off here. Actually, let me flip, and I will go to Jaylen Warren first. Warren, 2 huge, long touchdown runs in the fourth quarter. Ends up at 143 and 2 touchdowns, and then he did have 2 catches for 8 yards. So we got 151 scrimmage yards, 29 fantasy points in a PPR league. Kenny Gainwell is right there. Kenny Gainwell, 5 for 78 and a touchdown through the air. He ran for 50 yards. So again, we got 23. So Warren did outscore him by a good distance, but it had been Gainwell's game for a while there. Gainwell had this incredible touchdown catch. They tried to call it incomplete, and it was clear he not only caught it, but Alex Anzalone didn't touch him, and he got up and ran. So the wide receivers, the running backs go wild. Aaron Rodgers throws for 266 and a touchdown. Not a great game for him, but it got them the win, and that's really all they care about. DK Metcalf, 4 for 42, a little bit disappointing there. He had something going on with a fan. Looked at the fan, says when he kind of like gave like a half-hearted slap to the fan. We'll hear more about that. I hope he doesn't get suspended, because I imagine a fan probably says something really, really horrible to him. But it'll all be his word against his word, and we'll see what happens there. Leading receiver outside of Kenny Gainwell, Adam Thielen, 4 for 49. Everybody had him in their lineup, of course, right? I thought it was a great matchup for DK Metcalf. He did have a touchdown called back. There was an offensive interference on Darnell Washington, but Metcalf did lead the team with 9 targets. But again, 4 for 42. He's had worse games, not what you wanted, but there is that. But anyway, Lions drop a very, very big game. All right, check this out. If you're like us and you hate when your fantasy football season ends before the real football gets good, you got to try playoffblitz.com. It's fantasy football built for the NFL playoffs. No draft, no waivers, no sweat. Members just pick a lineup each week from the playoff teams. You can only use each player once. So once you start a player, you lose them. That's where the strategy kicks in. Remember, no need to hold a draft. Just create a league and invite your friends. Starting a league is super easy. It takes less than a minute, and you're all in from wild card weekend to the Super Bowl. Playoffblitz.com is your home for fantasy football playoff. Leagues are $79, and you can invite as many people as you like. Run an office pool, invite league mates from your regular season leagues, or even your grandma's bingo league. Join play at playoffblitz.com, where fantasy football meets the Super Bowl. Enter promo code ROTOWIRE for a discount on your league today. All right, instant reaction number 5. We have the unexpected performances of the day. I did cover the late game unexpected performance for the most part. I will say Marvin Harrison, we didn't talk about that game. Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride both had very disappointing performances. I didn't have them in this list, but actually let me talk about them for a minute. And I will start there because I did have other players. Jacoby Brissett had his first bad game. His first game under 22 fantasy points in 10 starts. Throws for 203, an early touchdown and a pick. Michael Wilson caught an early touchdown, a 32-yarder, 2 for 52 and a touchdown. It was a fine. You live with that. Marvin Harrison, 1 for 14 on 3 targets. Trey McBride tied with Elijah Higgins for 8 targets. McBride, 4 for 27, while Higgins was the leading receiver, 7 for 91. That was a very, very weird day. Drake London on the other side, 3 for 27, while Kyle Pitts had another big game, 7 for 57 and a touchdown. I did not think there was a world where Drake London would not come in and go off, but I will say this. that there were 35 passes. So 11 targets to Bijan Robinson, 9 to Pitts, 8 to London. There was plenty for all of them. All right, other unexpected performances. Chris Olave, 10 for 148 and 2 touchdowns, 16 targets against the Jets. Game of the season. A garbage time touchdown pass from Taysom Hill put the dagger into that big game. Chase Brown only touched the ball 16 times. 2 more receiving touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, 109 yards. Week winner there. Justin Jefferson, if you start him, you got 6 for 85. You can't argue for a player who's been getting less than 5 points per game. Quentin Johnson, if you start him, 4 for $104 and a touchdown. On the other side, Josh Allen, 12 for 19, 130, no touchdowns, rushed for 17 yards, got you 8 fantasy points. Not his fault. They played to control the game. They got an early lead. They kind of sat on the ball. But Josh Allen, it was the worst possible time to have a bad week. Jackson Dart, if you played him, 7 of 13, 33 yards and a pick. Rushed for 7 yards. Got you about 1.2 points in most leagues. Bucky Irving lost another goal line carry to Sean Tucker. No targets. 19 for 71. Rico Dowdle, 9 for 29 on the ground, 4 for 14 through the air. Got you about 8 PPR points. Not the end of the world, but certainly a far cry from where he was. And then finally, Travis Kelce, believe he had a catch for a couple of yards. Not good at all. All right, everybody. Thanks to our sponsor, Prosper Trading. We can stop gambling on games you can't control. Start trading the market you can. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Come back next week for another edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. All right. I see a question from Alex G. Not sure if I'm answering. I don't answer questions, but since the show's over, I'm going to real quickly give you this one. Better chance of achieving 21 points, Jennings or Diggs? Diggs is not getting targets. Jennings gets red zone targets. I'd give Jennings the edge. All right. Those that stayed the extra minute, thank you, and good luck in the rest of your games.